Are you here, Tivia? Yeah. Okay. The Isurim D'Rabbanon, which are protective measures against violation of the Melochos of Kosaiv. I believe we're on page 978. Raz?
It's my markers come out.
Hey.
My marker's out, but it looks like it could be there because it's hanging. Yeah, could be there.
Are you looking for the place?
And yes, please.
Page 977E, the bottom of the page.
Right.
Right. Okay. All right. The E. Yeah, E. All right, let's carry on. He talks about different kinds of sort of transactions. Transaction of making something hefker, declaring it ownerless, which is especially important at of Pesach when we want to make our chometz ownerless, at least the chometz that we could not find and didn't sell. So we do bitul chometz, and the idea of bitul is not some spiritual pronouncement over the chometz. It's a legal reality. It becomes ownerless. So technically, if you found my chometz, which I missed, you can take it. I don't know why you would want it. You would then have the same problem as I did, because it's at a Pesach, and you have to get rid of your chometz too. But technically, yes, you could have it. So that's one type of transaction. Other types are sort of transaction, which involve games and winning and losing, weighing and measuring, and that's a whole category in itself. So let's carry on with E on the bottom of 977.
I can read.
You're recording it, yes, Tivia. So I think there are several people who are being load shed and they would appreciate the recording. So please put it on the group that there is a recording and anyone can get it from you and play it. Go ahead. Thank you, Eleni.
Divesting ownership, declaring hefka. Formal abandonment of one's property is prohibited because the act of abandonment called hefka is an authentic form of halachic transaction, even though there is no acquisition of the property, i.e., it is a transaction to the state of non-ownership. However, one may declare hefka on Shabbos upon any of his belongings for a mitzvah requirement. Example, one who realizes on the eve of Pesach that fell on Shabbos that he did not yet sell his chometz may abandon ownership by declaring it hefka on Shabbos. Board games and similar pastimes. Games whose main theme is that of business, example Monopoly, should preferably not be played on Shabbos. Similarly, it is not permitted to play games that usually require writing in order to keep track of the player's scores. Example Scrabble, if one is in the habit of keeping a written score. Playing chess on Shabbos does not technically conflict with halacha, but nonetheless, it is preferable to refrain from playing on Shabbos. One is not permitted to cause himself undue aggravation on Shabbos, see section 1. Therefore, one who is sensitive to losing a match and knows that he may become irritated may not play on Shabbos. One must be aware of the laws of boire when replacing chess pieces after the game. They may not be sorted from a mixed pile of different colored pieces. However, one may sort various pieces just before the game is to be played. Betting, playing.
You remember the difference. If you make a pile of pawns, that's boirer. If you take the piece that you need and put it on the board, that's not boirer.
Yes. Betting, playing cards, dreidel, etc. Betting is forbidden on Shabbos and weekdays. One should refrain from playing games in which one stands to lose or gain, such as dreidel and the like. Even if played for items other than money, it resembles buying and selling and falls within the injunction against transactions on Shabbos. Measuring and weighing on Shabbos. It is generally forbidden to measure or weigh food or objects on Shabbos or Yom Tov because this sort of activity commonly relates to business pursuits, which often involve writing. Example, a woman may not measure oil or sugar in a measuring cup when adding them to food such as chopped liver, salads, etc., but rather should estimate the desired amount. On Yom Tov, however, if she's afraid that relying on an estimate could likely spoil the food, she's permitted to use a marked measuring cup, but not a scale, if this is how she normally does it during the week. When baking challah or cake on Yom Tov, where permissible, one may not measure the flour, but should estimate the required amount. One may not weigh himself on any kind of scale or measure his height or weight, waist measurements, and the like. Scales, tape measures, and rulers are muktzah, machmas isur. See Mavir for explanation on muktzah, and may not be moved or handled unless needed for permissible use or occupying space that is needed. Even measuring, i.e. calculating time, is forbidden.
We're going to see about measuring a baby or
Formula.
measuring food for someone who needs a very exact amount of food or medicine, a patient. So we'll see that soon.
Example, one may not use
Yeah.
a match to measure how many seconds it takes to answer a game quiz. Oh, a watch, sorry.
Watch.
One may not use a watch to measure how many seconds it takes to answer a game quiz. Similarly, one may not measure time with an hourglass. Measuring for mitzvah purposes. It is permitted to measure or weigh something when this is necessary for the fulfillment of a mitzvah. Examples, one may measure the capacity of a kiddush cup or goblet to determine if it holds a sufficient volume of wine. One may measure the size of matzah or maror to determine if it is the required amount for the mitzvah. Measuring for the needs of an ill person. It is permitted to measure in order to attend to the needs of an adult or child who is ill. Examples, one may take the temperature of an adult or child who is ill. Regarding the use of plastic thermometers that change color, see tzovea. One may also measure a dose of medicine. One may measure his blood pressure if required to do so for medical reasons, provided the use of the blood pressure gauge and apparatus does not entail any melocha. When preparing baby cereal for a small child, one may measure the amounts of cereal or milk if this is necessary to ensure that it will be palatable for the child. A small child is regarded for halachic purposes as an ill person. However, where estimating is adequate, measuring should be avoided.
Just general point, you know that the baby is going to need the cereal tomorrow morning, Shabbos morning. So if you measure it out before Shabbos, it's much preferable. Although it's mutter, but if you create a situation where you don't need it, you measure out an amount, put it in a plastic bag, and tomorrow you empty the plastic bag into a bowl, much preferable.
Counting floor, wall tiles in a room. While measuring the size of a room by using any implement, example, tape measure, shoe lengths, etc., is prohibited, some poskim contend that one may count the number of floor or wall tiles in a room, even if this is done to calculate the size of the room or its height. Similarly, one may count the floors of a tall building, example, by counting the windows to determine how many stories high it is. According to this view, only measuring, not counting, is prohibited. Determining the size of an object by merely counting consistent markings in its design or symmetry is not included under the rabbinic restriction. However,
Okay,
this
you
halakha
changed that paragraph completely in second edition.
Rabbi, I didn't hear you.
This paragraph was completely changed in the second edition. So if anybody has the first, you should try to find the new version.
Can I continue?
Reading newspapers.
Many poskim prohibit reading any newspapers and news magazines on Shabbos because much of the content contains business-related news and information, while some poskim defend the practice. Even the lenient views should acknowledge that reading newspapers on Shabbos is not recommended. In any case, one may not read the commercial advertisements or business sections.
Now, let me stop you. This is a problem with many of the publications that are put out in shuls. They are sponsored by companies who are advertising their wares or their services in the publication. And that's a problem. They obviously want you to read it and to come to them after Shabbos for business. But that kind of reading that kind of advertisement is problematic in itself. So if you can take home, we don't want people to stop advertising because then they're going to stop publishing the newsletters, and the newsletters serve a good purpose. So we do want people to follow up on the advertising, but rather take home the publication on Shabbos if there's a native, or after Shabbos if there's none, then follow it up later. But don't read the adverts on Shabbos itself.
It should be noted that this halakhic controversy referred to newspapers of an earlier period, before the debasement of moral standards that is now pervasive in society and characteristic of almost all print media. It is very questionable whether most newspapers and magazines today may be read at any time. Business news and periodicals. Business newspapers, example, Wall Street Journal, industrial trade magazines, stock market newsletters, and the like, may not be read on Shabbos and are muktzah, machmas, isur as well. Mail order catalogs. Merchandise and mail order catalogs may not be read by one who may intend to buy any of the items. However, one who has absolutely no intention of buying anything, but is merely curious and derives pleasure from browsing through these catalogs is permitted to do so on Shabbos.
Many of these catalogs have gadgets, interesting inventions. So if you're going through it just to see what someone's come up with and have no intention of buying, then it's fine.
In either case, the catalog is muktzah, machmas isur, and may not be handled or moved unless it is needed. Example, to be read by someone permitted to do so, or the space it occupies is needed. Religious newspapers containing Torah-related articles and essays may be read on Shabbos. However, one must be careful not to read the advertisements. Reading for pleasure. As a general rule, it is best to refrain from reading any secular books on Shabbos. Strictly speaking, however, pleasure reading on Shabbos, example, stories in Hebrew or containing Torah themes or morals, is not forbidden. Nevertheless, men in particular are exhorted to devote their time to Torah studies, i.e., any areas of Torah study that capture their interest and are enjoyable to them. There is no greater joy and satisfaction to the heart and mind in the study of Torah. Men and boys of learning age must therefore not permit themselves to waste away all of their precious Shabbos hours in idle conversation or reading. It is especially appropriate to study the laws of Shabbos during Shabbos. Needless to say, books or novels containing objectionable material obviously may not be read on Shabbos or any other time. Studying for tests on Shabbos. Many poskim prohibit studying on Shabbos in preparation for a test on secular subjects. It is permitted to study for a test on Limudei Kodesh because the study of Torah is itself a worthy Shabbos occupation. regardless of the purpose.
Let me stop you for a minute. There are two issues involved in studying for a test. Number one is that you're preparing on Shabbos for after Shabbos. Hachona, that's no good. Number two, often when you prepare for a test, you take notes, which would be like anything else that leads to writing. It's forbidden midrabanon because of that. However, what trumps both these considerations when you're learning is that it's a mitzvah to learn on Shabbos regardless of whether you have the test or you don't have the test. So therefore you may learn the material which you're going to be tested on Shabbos. And of course, you have to be careful not to have anything near to hand that might lead you to take notes.
One is
But
not
learning for secular exams is very problematic for both those reasons.
reading bills, accounts, correspondence. One is not permitted on Shabbos or Yom Tov to read bills, business correspondence, or even social letters, accounts, deeds, price lists, or any other papers or documents connected with one's day-to-day affairs. These items are also muktzah. Reading galley proofs on Shabbos. Proofreading. It is forbidden to read printers' proofs to detect mistakes because of the principle of mem tzoi hefzecho. There is also the risk that one may inadvertently amend the mistakes. One may not examine the printer's proof of an invitation to determine if the text is without errors. However, one may read the galley proofs of a sefer if his only intention is to learn its content. It should be noted that the proofs are muktzah machmas isur, melach toile isur, and may not be handled or moved unless one wishes to read them permissibly or they occupy needed space. Checking a published sefer for errors. One may look through a published sefer to detect printing errors to be discussed with the printer after Shabbos. Similarly, one is permitted to read from a sefer with the intention of checking for errors in the content that would be discussed after Shabbos. This does not contravene the prohibition of mem tzoi hefzecho, because the reader's post-Shabbos intentions are not obvious. This is unlike proofreading galleys where the intention is obvious. The concern that one may inadvertently write corrections in a printed book is also not as great as is with printers' proofs. Reading a guest list. On Shabbos or Yom Tov, it is generally forbidden for a host or hostess to read a guest list or a menu of the courses to be served at meals because of the likelihood of inadvertently revising the list while studying it. One must be especially aware of this when making a kiddush in honor of a bar mitzvah or sheva brochas. At these occasions, it is common that many family guests are invited to the Shabbos meals, and the hostess may feel the need to keep a list of guests and a menu of the courses to be served at each of the meals. According to some poskim, there is basis to permit having such a list and designating someone other than the hostess, i.e., one who does not feel the responsibility of the serving to read the list. Someone other than the hostess or her family is not familiar or concerned with the accuracy of the list, and therefore has no reason to revise it.
Right. Look
Conducting
how
a
far
din
the
Torah
Gzera
on
goes. There's another way of doing it, and that is you could pin the list to the wall from which you don't remove or correct it on the wall. Okay.
It is prohibited to reside over a beis din or on Shabbos or to adjudicate litigation on Shabbos because court proceedings are usually accompanied by recording in writing. Similarly, issuing of a get and culminating the divorce on Shabbos, even if the document was written prior to Shabbos, is ordinarily not permitted because the entire proceeding is usually accompanied by inscribing an official record. Conducting a marriage or yibum is also prohibited because writing documents are usually part of the with an ink pen or lead pencil on a sheet of paper.
Okay. Your sound is getting wobbly, Eleni. Do you hear me? Now you're frozen. Everybody's frozen.
Yeah, you also get frozen and your sound goes in and out for me.
Oh,
Eleni,
my
I think
sound goes in and out.
I think it's just you, Eleni. I think you were the only one who was frozen on my screen. It might be your sound and your internet.
No, just Eleni.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Okay, so I'm full
Can you
bars. I'm gonna go sit by the Wi-Fi. Is that better?
So
Is that
far,
better?
so far, keep going. We'll see.
Okay, examples of Kosaiv: writing 2 letters with an ink pen or lead pencil on a sheet of paper, assembling a puzzle that will depict a sketch or picture, decorating a cake by forming a design with whip topping.
Okay. Now, remember that there are many Melochos that have opposite twins. So writing is a twin with erasing, except that erasing is inherently a negative action, not a productive action, and therefore the erasing has to be with the intention of rewriting. Besides, that's the way it was in the Mishkan. They wouldn't erase stam. They would erase with the intention of rewriting on the kroshim on the board. So all erasures are considered a melacha only if done with that intention. What happens if by erasing you're improving or you're making something legible, such as erasing a smudge, which makes the letters illegible? We'll see in a few minutes. But generally, the definition of the Melocha in the Mishkan and in the Mishnah is Mochaik al menas lichtoiv shtei oistiyos, erasing in order to be able to write 2 letters. Okay. Mochaik.
Mochaik in the Mishkan. Is it good, the sound?
Yes.
If the wrong symbol was mistakenly inscribed on one of the planks of the Mishkan, the incorrect inscription had to be erased in order to reinscribe the correct symbol. This erasing was the Meloch of Mochaik. Thus, the purpose of Mochaik in the Mishkan was to prepare the surface of the planks for writing. Erasing the wrong symbol was necessary in order to reinscribe the correct symbol. However, erasing for any purpose, even where the surface is not needed for writing or drawing, is also prohibited.
Midrabanan.
Some authorities, see Introduction to Kosaiv, explain that the Melocha of Kosaiv was required in the Mishkan for keeping written records of the monies and precious materials that were used for the building of the Mishkan. According to this opinion, the Melocha of Mochaik was performed when a mistake had to be erased. It is possible to transgress the Melocha midoraisa of Mochaik by simply erasing a superfluous letter or character from a written surface. Example: one who erases, blots out, or whites out a single unwanted digit from the written numbers in his ledger is fully culpable of the Melocha of Mochaik. The basic premise of Mochaik: cleansing a writing surface. The Melocha of Mochaik may be defined as the cleaning of any surface to render it suitable for writing, whether this entails erasing of existing script, removal of dirt or a smudge, or any preparation that provides a writing surface. Examples: scraping or whiting out an ink stain from a clean sheet of writing paper, wiping a chalkboard to clean it for writing. As a general rule, the Melocha of Mochaik also includes any act that reverses or undoes an act of Kosaiv. Examples: erasing penciled writing to allow for corrections, whiting out penned characters in order to rewrite on that spot. Obliterating letters or characters. The Meloch of Mochaik does not necessarily have to take the form of erasing in a similar sense, such as erasing pencil writing with a pencil eraser. Any manner of defacing or obliterating letters, words, or pictures is Mochaik as well, even if the surface that remains is no more suitable for writing than before, or even if no surface remains at all. However, these may not be the Melocha Midoraisa. Examples: blotting out a printed page with ink or smearing black grease over the words, tearing a food wrapper or peeling an orange through printed words, or a company symbol is considered mochaik. Destroying toy letters made of plastic or wood. Cutting a cake with letters on the icing. A halachic question of mochaik. Cutting cakes and other foods with letters or meaningful depictions iced on them also represent a question of mochaik, because the cutting splits or breaks apart the icing, thereby destroying the letters or images. Some poskim adopt a lenient attitude on this matter, particularly if the writing is made of a food substance that would eventually dissolve in any case. It is nevertheless proper to avoid this shaila where possible, especially since these letterings are often made of icing or other substances which remain intact and do not dissolve. Therefore, one should not cut or break the letters or images. However, cutting only patterns or designs is not mochaik. Permissible methods of cutting a cake with letters. In the event that a cake with letters and pictures was decorated and prepared before Shabbos for a special occasion, Sheva Brochos, Bar Mitzvah, etc., the occasion can still be properly honored, as there are fully permissible methods of cutting and eating the cake. One may carefully slice off each letter, picture, etc., together with some of the icing or cake beneath it. There is no need to be overly concerned if the letter inadvertently breaks apart while being removed, as this consequence would be neither intentional nor inevitable. Davar she'eino niskaven. If this is difficult, one may even remove the letters directly, i.e., without slicing off any cake or icing together with them. It is also permitted to cut between the letters. The slices of cake may then be eaten, even though the letters on the icing will be obliterated in the process. If the letters were already cut but not separated, if letters on the cake were already cut prior to Shabbos, but the cake slices were not yet separated and removed, i.e., the sliced letters are still eligible, they may nevertheless be removed on Shabbos, even though this will now cause the letters to become parted completely. Shaping food. This is permitted because the letters were broken from before and not truly connected. The mere juxtaposition of the broken letter parts is no different than lettered cards being placed next to one another, the separation of which is permitted. Cutting between letters. One may cut around or between the letters of a cake, even if a word is broken, as long as none of the individual letters or symbols becomes obliterated or broken. Only erasing or breaking individual letters is mochaik. Breaking the completeness of a word without breaking any letters is not mochaik. Therefore, separating existing letters of a word from each other is not mochaik and is even permitted, even though the word is thereby broken. Cutting between letters.
I'd like to stop earlier because we're coming up to many days of Yom Tiv. So let's finish this section until E, and then we'll stop, okay?
Okay. Cutting between connected letters of a word written in script may be questionable if a significant part of the letter itself will be broken as a result. Even so, one is permitted to cut between connected words as long as the basic form and shape of each separate letter is individually recognizable. Accordingly, care must be taken to ensure that each individual letter remains complete and retains its legible identity. Therefore, one must be extremely careful to cut only the connecting line between the letters so that the letter itself is not broken as a result. Regarding eating a slice of cake with letters, see below.
Okay, let's stop. Now, we're coming to Rosh Hashanah. Yom Kippur is just like Shabbos. Sukkot is first and last days, and we're not going to have opportunity to have any shiurim until after the Yom Tovim. So let's go through any questions that people have about the Yom Tovim.
Rabbi Weinberg,
Yeah,
can I ask a question? I cook with gas. Now, can I tell my maid before Yontif to switch it on and off? Because I can't leave it burning for the full time of Yontif.
okay. You have electronic ignition.
No, I would do it with the existing flame.
Existing flame. Do you have a pilot light?
No.
Problem. The problem.
Ah,
What you should do is keep it on a very low flame, covered so that the wind doesn't blow it out. And as you need it, you can turn it up and ask the maid to turn it down when you don't.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other?
Yes.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I have an Aquasania machine for cold water. It's plugged in, but I don't hear any electrical process for the hot little taplet. Someone who in my community uses the hot water on Shabbos. Do you know anything about the technology of those machines and if the hot is available for us?
Okay, as soon as you press the valve for the hot water, cold water comes in from the bottle to
heat
replace,
up.
and it's instantly boiled.
So it's a problem.
So it shouldn't be used on Shabbos. No,
On Yontif, it's fine.
a Yom Tov
Would
is
be.
fine. Yeah,
It would
yeah.
be, yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anything? Yeah. Now, I was asked about timers. Miriam Perkel wanted to know about timers. Let me just look up her question. Okay, don't see it now. What I remember is this. With all the load shedding that's going on, if you have a timer that turns appliances on or off, now the timer is out of whack because the load shedding stopped the timer for a couple of hours. So now
Yeah.
for as many hours as the load shedding was happening, the timer is that many hours behind. So for example, if there was load shedding between 3 and 6 in the morning, and you had set a timer to turn on the lights on Yom Tov at, let's say, 1 o'clock, when everybody comes from shul, more or less. So you set the timer for 1 o'clock, but now that the electricity was off earlier between 3 and 6, so what the timer is showing as 1 o'clock is actually 4 o'clock. So the lights will go on at 4 o'clock. So the question now is, may I reset the timer so that it goes on at the time that I originally wanted it to go on? That was the question. Now, we've discussed timers on Shabbos and Yom Tov before, but here's a little bit of a knetch, of a twist in this. So rule number one, there are many timers which, when you adjust them, you are actually switching them off and you are then turning them back on. To be more specific, I don't want to be too specific because I don't want you to think that it applies only in this case. But for example, if you have a dial and the dial indicates the hours, and there's a little protrusion from the dial that hits a switch. When the dial with the time comes to a particular time, then the thing protruding from the dial pushes the switch in one direction and the lights will go on. At another time, as the dial continues, it'll hit another switch and turn the lights off. Now, if you disconnect the dial in order to adjust the time, what you're actually doing is deactivating it and then reactivating it. The two Melochos. So that's definitely also, even if you didn't change the time. I don't know why you would do it if you didn't change the time, but in fact, just the act of re-engaging it after disconnecting it is already two different isurim. So we're not talking about that kind of a timer. What we will talk about is the kind of timer which you can simply turn or otherwise adjust the timing so that the effect of the timer will be later or earlier without disengaging and re-engaging, okay? That's the kind of timer we'll talk about. Now, on Yom Tov, you may turn stoves, for example, or you may cause things to go on, but not off. On is Melochos oichel nefesh, is necessary for the food. Off is not. So now, let's say you adjusted the timer to turn on the oven or the heater, the warmer, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And like I said, the electricity went off for what's called, for 3 hours in the wee hours of the morning. And now it's showing a time that's 3 hours too late. Now it's showing the false time of, let's say, 9 o'clock, and it's actually 12 o'clock. So you may turn the timer to a later time to turn on that stove or turn on that light with the groma. Turning it off is a problem. Okay? If something is off, this we talked about Shabbos as well. If something is off and you want to continue it being off, you don't want it to come on when the timer would make it come on, that's fine. That's fine. You can keep it in the off position for longer because you're simply making things not happen for a longer period of time. That's not an issue. If you're making things happen, then it'll get complicated. In this case, because it's a gromo, you're not directly doing anything to the lights or to the appliances on or off. You're doing with a time delay, with a timer. Then where it's important for the Yom Tov meal or for people sleeping on Yom Tov or whatever, where it's important, then you should ask a goy to move the timer. The only time you should move the timer is if something is off and you want to continue it being off for a longer period. Then that's fine. That you can do yourself. But if you're making things go on or off with the timer when they would not have gone on or off, then you're best off using a goy to change the timing of those appliances. Clear? If there's no goy, you can't get a goy, then you can cause whatever is necessary for food, for cooking, for a Yom Tov meal. You can cause it to go on at an earlier time than it would if you wouldn't tamper with it. Such as if the appliance, the stove, would go on at 4 o'clock instead of what you wanted at 1 o'clock, then if there's no goy, then you can set the timer to turn on the appliance at 1 o'clock. Not at 1 o'clock, but you'll adjust the timer, let's say at 9 o'clock in the morning, so that at 1 o'clock, the appliance will go on when you need it. Okay, clear. It's not just to save money, unless there's such a substantial money that it'll really make a big dent in your wallet. That's called a hefsed merube, a major loss. But anything less than that, you're not allowed to do anything that would change the timer just for that smaller financial loss. But you may adjust it for the sake of the Yom Tov meal, or the company, etc. This is Yom Tov, not Shabbos. Again, this is Yom Tov. Okay, was that clear?
Yes, very clear.
Okay. Good.
Rabbi, I
Rob?
have a rather unusual question. I have a
Yeah.
little solar panel, which I keep on my windowsill. And some mornings, like say, it's attached to a torch, and the torch is on. Now, if I,
It's attached to a torch.
yeah, solar torch, that's what gives the light. And some mornings when I open my curtains, the solar panel falls down. Is that muktzah to pick it up and put it by the sun? Small.
The solar panel falls down.
Yes, it falls like onto the pillow below it. It falls off the windowsill, out of the sun.
Okay,
I
I
thought
mean, never mind Shabbos and Yom Tov, you don't want it falling down because it's gonna break.
No, it doesn't. There's a pillow below it. I've got there's a pillow below it. It can't break. But I'm just saying, if it falls down on Shabbos, and I may need the torch later for light.
You can put the solar panel back. How is it sticking to the window still?
It's got a It's got a little stand. And it stands
Oh,
on the
it's
window.
just standing.
Yeah. Now, can I take the connection out once if we have load shedding? Can I take the connection out and
I'm
carry
not
the
clear
torch
how
around?
this is working. Is the torch currently on?
Sorry, you've broken up.
Is the torch on?
It has to be on. Yes, I leave
Not
it
the
on
panel,
on
the
Shabbos.
torch.
It's a Shabbos
No, the
light.
torch is on. It's got to be fixed. Yeah, like last week we had load shedding at from 6 to 8:30. We sat in the dark like idiots. So I had my.
What happened to Shabbos licht?
No, what's a Shabbos?
The Shabbos. No, it wasn't Moshe Shabbos. It was
Oh.
6 o'clock as Shabbos came in.
Oh.
I don't have an inverter.
Yeah, but you have Shabbos lights.
Yeah, but I'm just
Candle.
saying if I have to go to another room, can I use that torch? It's the
You
same
can
as those
take that
lamps.
torch with you.
Okay.
It's an LED light.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly.
Yeah. You can take it with you.
Thank you.
So you can, sorry, Rabbi Wineberg, so you can carry those lanterns around on Shabbos, those LED. Wow, okay. Didn't know.
Yeah, LED.
Yes.
Mm.
Okay. Any other questions about Yom Tov?
We should
No.
suggest to the author of the series to include South Africa next time.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if this war in Ukraine carries on, the questions will be not only for South Africa, but the fuel shortage is going to affect a couple of other countries too.
I've heard that it's going on in other countries,
Wow.
You know?
especially in Europe.
Okay, and there was this massive shutdown in London the other day. Everything stopped. They were
Why?
burying somebody.
Sure.
Well, I hope it wasn't on Thursday. I mean, Monday. Hope it wasn't on Monday.
No, it was Monday, sure.
Oh, with the funeral.
It was the funeral. That's why everything shut down.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you
Have a
so much.
good week.
Thank you.
A good gebenched year
Amen.
for everybody in whatever she needs for herself and family. For Klal
Amen.
Yisrael, may it be a year of brachas and open and
Amen.
revealed good.
Amen.
Amen.
Geula with Mashiach Tzidkenu.
Amen.
Mamish.
Thanks,
Rabbi.
thanks
And
so
thank
much,
you all
Rabbi
again.
Wineberg.
Amen.
you.
Thank you for your time, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
wisdom.
Good to go bench
Thank
to
you,
your.
You just dropped some of the egg on